Welcome back to NRP, guys. In today's video, as you can see, we have a bunch of M3s behind me. If you couldn't tell, they're all red. And as you recently saw in the performance delivery video, Eric, one of the owners of NRP, just recently picked up this Rosa Corsa red G80 M3. Check it out. It looks so freaking good. So at the shop, we have these three cars. This is also Eric's stripper spec E90 M3. This is his old E36 M3 that we actually recently just sold and installed an LTW wing on. And BC coilovers. As you can see, the stances, or the car is sitting nice and low. The stance is still stock wheels, but, and you can see the LTW wing as well. But clearly you can tell Eric has a type red four-door sedan M3s. So I figured, since we have these cars laying around at the shop, might as well use them and make a video showing the progression of the M3s from the E36 all the way up to the G80. Now obviously the only one that's missing in this is the F80 M3. If we had one sitting in the shop, we actually recently had a customer who brought the same color Ferrari red F80 M3 into the shop, and we probably could have done that video that day, but then the cars just weren't clean and stuff. But today we just have these three. I know we're just skipping over the F80 for this one, but it's cool to see the progression from, we are also skipping the E46, so I guess it's okay. It's kind of like a pattern here. So in today's video, we're just going to be showing you guys the differences. We're going to show you guys how much the cars have progressed, show the little things, and show also some of the traditions that BMW decided to carry over and still keep till this day, 20 years later. One thing right off the bat that I'd like to show you is the wing mirrors. As you can see, BMW consistently kept that tradition of the wing mirror through all these generations, as you can see right here as well on the G80. It's a little bit more boxier and stuff on the G80, but it's still definitely there. Another cool thing to note is the color differences between these three. This is Hellrot red, this is Melbourne red, and this is obviously Rosa Corsa, aka Ferrari red on the G80. Obviously, of the three, I don't know if the camera's able to show you or tell you, but the G80's paint looks the best out of the three, but I'm not gonna lie, the E36 does look a lot better than the E90 does paint color wise. Melbourne red is kind of more of a flat, darker tone. It's not to say that it looks ugly, but next to these two bright, hot reds, it just doesn't look as good. It definitely looks a little bit more boring, but overall it's still a really cool color. And this spec I think is the coolest of the three. Granted, the G80 is definitely gonna turn out to be a really cool spec as time goes on, but you don't see a lot of speed cloth cars that are 6-speed, single hump, stripper spec, so no sunroof. You don't really see a lot of these on the E90. And then when we move over to E36, even this spec is actually kind of hard to find with the factory black interior, Hellrot red. You know, it's the 5-speed. It's a very nice color combination. I think they only made like, honestly, I don't even want to say the number because I'm not sure, but I know it's like under 1,000 of these, maybe even under 500. It's not a very common color combination to find in the M3. Oh my god, there's a bee. And the E36 sedan is already such a difficult car to find, let alone in this cool ass color. The new owner actually recently just got a 2-step paint correction done to it as well. That's why the color is popping so much and it looks so freaking good. Check it out. Hopefully the camera shows and it does it justice. It does have some fingerprints on it because we were working on it, but overall it does look really freaking good. This car specifically has the DS2s from the factory on it. A lot of people prefer the LTW wheels on this thing, and I do as well. I think they do look really freaking good. The E90 has the competition wheels, so of its time, the E36's competition wheel would have been the LTWs. For the E90, it's these competition wheels. Check out how nice they look. They're definitely some of the best wheels you can get on this car. So now we're going to talk about the stock seats and how much they've progressed over the years. As you can see in the E36, this is the regular sports seats that come with the E36 M3 sedans. The coupes came with Vader seats, so I guess this isn't a full-blown fair comparison. Had this car had Vaders, that would have been nice, but nice. But since this is the seat that came with the E36 M3 sedan from factory, I guess it's only fair. So these non-Vader seats, they're pretty comfortable. They're not very sporty, they don't hug you. The bolstering is there, but it's just not that great. You can see right here in the passenger one, it's just it's not bad. It's not amazing, it's not bad, it's just kind of right there. It's pretty comfortable as well. It's not bad. I think if I would sit in this seat for a very long time, like if I took like a nice 8-hour long drive, these seats would be just fine. But in terms of like holding me in place, yeah, no, these aren't going to do it. Probably Vaders would be a better comparison for that. Now getting into the E90, yeah, this seat's a little bit better. It's equally as comfortable. It definitely, the bolstering is better, and I think it's also adjustable, so you can inflate the side bolsters right here to make sure that if they inflate, they can hug you a little bit better. And it also has this adjustability where you can adjust it and get some more, I guess, thigh support, which is nice. These definitely hug you better. Would I say they're as comfortable, if not more comfortable? I think they are a little bit more comfortable. They do feel a little bit better. They do feel better and more high quality as well, if you will. The seating position is nice too. It's just as good as the E36. The E36 interior is a little bit more driver oriented. That's one thing I love about BMWs is how much the dashboard and everything faces the driver versus like the E9X It's not as much, it still is, but just not as much as the E36 and the E46. Also to point out, the interior quality just feels so much better than the E36 in this car. Again, we are jumping 2 generations, so we're going from the E36 to the E90 and just completely skipping the E46. But overall, I think their seat design has improved, and it's definitely better than what the E36 was, and I definitely know for a fact these are better than Vader's. Now, getting into the G80, first of all, off-rip, getting into these carbon buckets is much harder than any of those two. You can just tell right away how much BMW improved on these seats. Granted, these aren't the most stock seats. You have to upgrade to get the carbon buckets, but the fact that BMW was able to make this seat, like, check it out, look at this bolstering right here, and you can see this carbon piece. I'm not sure what that's for, but it looks great. And you can see the bolster support right here. Like, it's very nice. It hugs you nice. And then the backing just being carbon fiber are so sick. I know you guys can't see right now. I'll show you guys it in a sec. But overall, not only is it super tight and it hugs you nicely, it holds you in place, it's comfortable too. A lot of the times when car manufacturers make seats like this, what ends up getting compromised is comfort, and finding that great balance between, like, it's hugging you right but it's still comfortable. I think I can do a really nice long drive in these still. One thing I will admit though that they do suck at is just getting in and out of. That's the hardest part with these seats, I'd have to say. Granted, it's not my car, I'm sure Eric could preach this just as much, but getting in and out of these seats is definitely the hardest that I've seen out of any M car. One thing that definitely has stayed the same with all these M3 generations is the shift pattern. Reverse is still up to the left, and the shift boot itself and the feeling of it is also very similar to the E9X. Not so much the E36 because it's so worn out and old, but overall it does feel very similar and familiar when you are driving the manual in the G80. Since we are comparing M3 sedans, we should be talking about the rear seats as well, and the legroom and the headspace. So I'm like 5'9", 5'10", my head is perfectly fine, and also my knee space is just perfectly fine. This seat is not pushed up too much at all. It's like kind of in like a reasonable position, and it's still pretty good. I can slouch a little too and still have some leg room. Obviously the transmission hump is still there, but overall the rear seating space is kind of tight by today's standards, because we all know how much bigger the M3 has gotten. The E36, even as a sedan, is just such a small car, and I still feel like I fit okay in here, but definitely too small by today's standards. And I will also say the rear leather for the rear seats is definitely worn in, but it's still very comfortable. All right, getting into the E90, mind you, this is 2 generations later. I'm not sure, I think the seat might be a little bit too far back, but overall, definitely more headspace. The seat quality is obviously better. I mean, it's cloth, so I can't really compare that aspect, but in terms of legroom, it's not that much because of the seat being so far back. If I will admit, I would say this seems a little bit more spacious, and especially the cameraman right now seems a little bit further away than he did when we were in the E36, which was a little bit smaller. So this is definitely a much nicer place to be in terms of like leg space and room, but yeah, it's honestly, if I'm being honest guys, it's overall like the same thing. The E90 in general honestly didn't have that much leg space to begin with in the rear, and the rear seat wasn't much to talk about. It was when they introduced the F80 and the F30, how much bigger it was, how much more spacious it was in the back. Now let's check out how it is in the G80. Now getting into the G80, wow. This is insane. This is so much more spacious. Not only do I have tons of headroom, tons of leg space, I'm good, I'm chilling. Would I say it's more comfortable? I can't tell, honestly. Leather just feels the same to me, honestly. But overall, the leg space is definitely there, and it feels a lot more roomier and spacious back here. It would also come down to something like, how does it feel sitting in the back while it's driving? I'm sure it's more or less the same, but this is definitely way more spacious. The M3 has gotten so much bigger over the years. Along with the E36 and the E90 and the G80, one tradition they did not let go of, just like the wing mirrors, is the Hofmeister kink. Not only does the E36 and the E90 have it, they carried it over to the G80 as well, so that's still there, which is nice to see. Another thing that they still kept is obviously the fender grille. They've been doing that for years. I don't think the E36 had anything special, but the E46 is when they actually started putting this little grill thing here. It's definitely something that they started doing, and they kept that formula till this day. So obviously you can see the trend. The M3 is just getting bigger and bigger. It used to be on a diet, and now it's just huge. Clearly, you can obviously tell by the weight numbers too. The new G80 is around like 3,900-ish pounds. X-drive, rear-wheel drive, I'm not entirely sure. It could be a little bit less if it is the rear-wheel drive model. The E90 M3 was 3,700. I'm sure a stripper spec like this might be significantly less, maybe like 100 pounds or so less. And then the E36 was like 3,100 pounds. So you can obviously tell over the years, the M3 has just been getting larger and larger, which obviously comes with weight. So it is also getting heavier. That doesn't mean that they're not as fast, because obviously the S58 is insane. It's an insane motor, and BMW did a great job with it. The power potential is absolutely insane, and I'm super excited to see what Eric and Max end up doing with theirs, but it is significantly a much bigger car. Some do like to say that the characteristic of the M3 is how much it is a momentum car, it's a small car, it's a lightweight car, it's great in the corners. That's not to say this heavier G80 is not, because clearly we saw it still is at the Performance Center when we went to go driving. These things are still such great handling cars. But just seeing how much larger they've gotten is definitely, to some people, not the greatest thing to see. And it tends to make you think maybe the new M2s that come out are more similar to the M3s of the 90s and the early 2000s that we're so used to, the ones that we fell in love with. Another thing that has been inflated, if you will, is the starting prices and the MSRPs on these cars when they were new. So the starting MSRP on the E36 when it first came out in 1995 was $35,800, around there. The E90 M3 in like the 2008, 2010 era, the MSRP was like 56 grand. And we also have to account for inflation in those last 12 years. And the MSRP on a base G80, not this specific one, was $74,000. Now you're probably thinking, why are these cars getting more and more expensive? So if you adjust for inflation, $58,000 is just about $78,000, which is almost as much as how much it is to get a G80. So this thing being priced at where it is at, you could also maybe consider it a bargain or a ripoff. It's up to you. The interesting thing about today's video is the fact that we are skipping 2 generations in between. So if I had to say which the E90 is most similar with, since it is pretty much the middle child of this video and this comparison, it definitely has more in common with its predecessor than its successor, because when you see one of these rolling on the highway and you see their headlights and how the car just looks all together, it has definitely more in common with its design than it does with the G80. That in and of itself is a testament to the G80 and how much they've changed with the car. And here's Max. It's definitely nice to see some of the traditions and the design cues that they brought over and kept through the M3 generations for generations to come. But it's also definitely nice to see some things that didn't carry over. One thing with the E36 I'm glad didn't carry over is them not flaring the M3s. As you can see, the E90 is super flared compared to the E36. Granted, they're 2 different cars, but if you took a non-M E36 and took a E36 M3, it's literally the same. You cannot say the same about the E90 because the non-Ms are not as flared. The fenders just don't curve out as much as they do. And then the same could be said about the G80. The G80 versus the G20, the G80 is just so much more curvy. That is definitely something I'm glad they implemented with the E46 and continued on the tradition. They did do that on the E30 M3 as well. They decided not to do that on the E36. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm sure it had something to do with money. But overall, that's definitely something I'm glad they carried out. But anyway, guys, that pretty much wraps up today's video. Let me know what you guys think of today's video. If you guys want more comparison videos like this, I'm more than happy to do them. It's a lot of fun. It's very cool. It's cool to also learn and see the differences as well over the years. We have tons of M3s coming into the shop all the time. So whenever we do get a car, if you do follow us on Instagram, you can see cool cars that come in all the time. And if you want a specific YouTube video on it, just comment down below or comment on those posts on Instagram. Feel free to do so. I check all of it. I run all of it for NRP. So I will be seeing your comments. But one last look at the 3 cars before I end off the video, guys. The Ferrari Red does look freaking nice. Melbourne, in between them, it doesn't look as exciting, but it's definitely still a very nice color. And in my opinion, the E36 is just so timeless. Such a nice looking car. You can't beat it. But I'm also biased for E36s because I love them. But anyway, guys, that pretty much wraps up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one.